We have some breaking news coming in. Russia continues its aerial assault on Ukraine, and as per reports, Moscow launched 164 drones and an Iskander ballistic missile overnight on Ukraine. Ukrainian Air Force claims it downed 137 drones in the north, south and east of Ukraine. But other Russian drones escaped Ukrainian air defenses and struck 9 locations across Ukraine. The attack comes as top officials gather in Kiev for the annual Yalta European Strategy Conference. Now, Ukraine has also stepped up its attack on Russian oil and energy facilities, a day after Kiev claimed to have struck Russia's largest oil loading terminal in the Baltic. Moscow claims that it shot down 340 Ukrainian drones in the last 24 hours.
We have breaking news out of Ukraine, and it's sending shockwaves through Moscow. Overnight, Russia launched one of its biggest aerial assaults yet, firing off 164 drones and a ballistic missile in an attempt to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses. But here's the part Putin didn't expect. Ukraine's Air Force managed to shoot down 137 of those drones. That's an embarrassing failure for Russia, and it exposes how stretched their offensive really is. Now, not all of those drones were stopped. A few slipped past defenses and struck 9 different locations across Ukraine. But let's be clear. The scale of Russia's failure outweighs the damage they caused. Putin threw everything into the sky, and Ukraine still shut most of it down. And while Moscow wants to project strength, what this really shows is desperation. The Kremlin thought sheer volume would break Ukraine's defenses, but it didn't. In fact, it's backfiring, because every wasted drone is another sign that Russia's resources are being chewed up at a faster pace than they can sustain. And Ukraine isn't just sitting back. They're taking the fight directly into Russia's backyard. In the last 24 hours, Kiev has stepped up strikes on Russian oil and energy infrastructure. Just a day ago, Ukrainian forces claimed they hit Russia's largest oil loading terminal in the Baltic. Think about what that means. Hitting energy targets is a direct blow to the Russian economy and the war machine that depends on it. This isn't symbolic, this is strategy. If Russia can't fuel its military, its offensive grinds to a halt. That's why these strikes matter. They're not about headlines, they're about cutting off the very supply lines that keep Moscow's war alive.
Major logistics and communications hubs since the past few weeks. Now, some reports claim that at least 69 Russian soldiers have been captured since early August, while others estimate that the number could be more than 100. The Pokrovsk offensive began in late July when Russian forces in a surprise infiltration bid carved out a 15-kilometer salient in Ukraine-held territory near the town of Dobropilya, threatening Pokrovsk.
But the fiercest fighting right now is in Pokrovsk, a critical logistics hub in eastern Ukraine. Back in late July, Russian forces carved out a 15-kilometer wedge near the town of Dobropilya, threatening to take Pokrovsk. For weeks, it looked like Russia might make it stick. Then Ukraine regrouped. In the last few weeks, they've launched a massive counterattack, clawing back nearly 2/3 of the ground lost. Reports say Ukrainian forces have inflicted over 1,000 Russian casualties in this area alone. Even more, they've managed to surround pockets of Russian troops who are now cut off with nowhere to run. This isn't only a battlefield victory, it's a morale-shattering blow. The Kremlin tried to sell Pokrovsk as the centerpiece of its summer offensive. Now it's turning into another example of overreach and failure. And here's the point. Ukrainian forces aren't only pushing Russians back, they're capturing them in large numbers. Since early August, reports say at least 69 Russian soldiers have been taken prisoner. Other estimates put the figure closer to 100 or more. Ukraine's National Guard has even released a video showing groups of captured Russian troops. It's hard to spin that away. Moscow doesn't want its people seeing their soldiers surrendering en masse, but the footage is out there. For Ukraine, it's proof of momentum. For Russia, it's humiliation. And if this many troops are being captured now, imagine how many are on the verge of being surrounded as Ukraine continues pressing forward. Let's be honest, the numbers alone tell the story. Russia claimed this Pokrovsk offensive would be their big breakthrough for the summer. They even declared the city a primary target for their spring and summer operations. But look at reality. After weeks of bloody fighting, Ukraine has not only taken back most of the land, but is also leaving Russian troops trapped and bleeding resources. That's not victory for Moscow, that's public defeat. The Kremlin loves to put out flashy announcements about capturing a few settlements here or there, but the bigger picture shows a military struggling to hold on. Pokrovsk is proving that Russia's grand offensives are running out of steam. And this is where propaganda really comes into play. Russia's defense ministry insists their troops are advancing on the Eastern Front, claiming they've captured villages in Donetsk and even in northern Ukraine's Sumy region. But let's cut through it. Those are crumbs compared to the losses they've taken in Pokrovsk. That's why Ukrainian reports matter. They show soldiers surrendering, Russian positions being surrounded, and casualties piling up. Putin wants his people to believe in some slow, steady advance. The truth? His army is stuck in the mud, wasting manpower and relying on propaganda to hide the disaster. Now contrast that with Ukraine's leadership. President Zelensky didn't just sit behind closed doors while this was happening. He took the stage in Kiev at the European Strategy Conference and told the world exactly how Ukraine plans to win the war, by starving Russia's war machine of fuel. He even joked that the U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg is like an air defense system protecting citizens. But make no mistake, the message was serious. Ukraine's strategy is about breaking Russia's capacity to wage war. That's confidence talking. While Putin hides behind staged statements and silence, Zelensky is standing with the allies and projecting strength. And that's why the momentum right now clearly favors Ukraine. And it's not just talk. Even Switzerland, historically neutral Switzerland, has now broken tradition, adopted EU sanctions, and frozen Putin's assets. When countries like that take sides, it shows how isolated Russia is becoming. Now, let's talk about peace talks, because the Kremlin announced a pause in negotiations. Their excuse? That European countries are blocking progress. That's laughable. Moscow doesn't want peace, they want time. Time to rebuild, time to breathe, and time to figure out how to spin their battlefield failures into something that looks like a win back home. Even Trump's name is being dragged into this, with the Kremlin claiming he knows negotiations will take longer. Here's the truth. Russia isn't pausing talks because of Europe. They're pausing because they're losing on the ground. And when you're losing, talking peace makes you look weak. Putin knows that, and that's exactly why he's stalling. So let's call it what it is. Putin's grand assault just backfired. He wasted drones, lost soldiers, and got humiliated on the global stage, while Ukraine not only held firm, but hit back harder. The truth is simple. Russia is bleeding resources, troops, and credibility. Ukraine, meanwhile, is proving it can stand, it can fight, and it can win with international backing. And every time the Kremlin tries to bluff its way to victory, it ends up exposing weakness instead. That's why this war won't end on Moscow's terms. Ukraine is dictating the fight, and Putin is running out of cards. That's all today from us here at Zone Media Network. Feel free to head over to American Zone for the latest American news. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.